upon a time, in a tiny little village on the eastern ocean shore, lived a fisherman named Okusaki with his young wife and 3 little children. They were very, very poor. While her husband was out on the sea fishing, Aiko went to the market day by day and sold the catch of the previous day. Yet the money she made, no matter how much her husband caught, was hardly enough to pay the rent and satisfy their frugal needs. One afternoon, while Okusaki rode the quiet waves with his fishing boat, suddenly, without any previous sign, black clouds gathered overhead. Fast winds began to blow, and before he noticed, the boat dashed away from the land so quickly that he couldn't even see the rooftops of his village. Soon the night descended, but Okusaki wasn't afraid that he'd be lost, for the sea and the sky and the sun, moon, and stars had been his friends for a long time, and he knew that with their help, he would find his way home again. So despite the raging storm and the black night, he fell peacefully asleep in the bottom of his boat, wrapping himself in the canvas of its sails. Next morning, when he awoke, the sun shone gloriously, and the boat was aground on the beach of an island. Okusaki got out of his boat, walked around the island, and he found it beautiful. Green grass covered its soil. Young forests grew on the tender slopes of its central hill, and colorful flowers scented all the fields. Okusaki raised the mast, stretched out the white sail, and harnessing the light breeze, sped home on the back of the whispering waves. Aiko, with the 3 children and some of their friends, had been waiting for him on the shores since sunrise, first sobbing and wailing in the dimness of the dawn, but then jumping and dancing and exulting as a white dot appeared on the horizon and grew bigger and bigger. After kissing and hugging his family and friends, Okusaki told them of how the unpredictable gods of the firmament blew his boat far away from the land, beyond the horizon, to show him that magic island. The next day they all sailed together to see the place and decided that they would make it their new home. And in the next few years, more families followed Okusaki and Aiko and their friends, building more and more wooden houses on the slopes of the hill above the fragrant meadows. In the mythologies of the eastern Pacific Islands, there is a word for a sea monster whose size, compared to the biggest whale, is that of the mammoth compared to that of the elephant. It is said that only a few such monsters are left from a previous world age, when all the living creatures had much longer lives than in our age. Gundragandra is the name of this fish. It lives for 800 to 1,000 years, spends most of its time in the farthest depths of the ocean, and likes to crawl in the mud of the bottom. But from time to time, it comes up from the deep to fill its lungs with air and to sleep for 30 to 40 years. As it floats serenely during these sleeping periods, the wind blows seeds of flowers and trees onto its mud-covered back, which in a few years come to look uncannily like a real island. Such a primeval monster was the one on which Okusaki and his friends settled and lived for years in happiness and wealth. But one morning, when the men had just prepared their boats, and the women had just cooked breakfast, and the children had just left for school, the Gundragandra, in the last minutes of a dream, and feeling a strange itching on its back, awoke. It shook its gigantic body, filled its lungs with air, and turning over, dived, cheerfully somersaulting back into the dark depths of the ocean, taking with it the lives of Okusaki and Aiko, and their children, and their friends, and their homes, and their gardens, and their boats, and their richness, and their happiness, and their hope.